Today, I'm going to talk about the $100 dinner club. When the pandemic hit, I immediately went into this mode of like, how can we change the narrative again? How can we change these stories again? And my first idea that I had was the restaurants immediately closed down, and I knew they were going to be in trouble. One of my sayings in life is we are the they. And essentially what it means is everybody always says, man, this is terrible. Somebody needs to do something about this. Yet nobody was doing anything. I'd seen a video about 2-3 months earlier that came up on my Facebook. There was a couple of realtors in my area had gone to breakfast, and each of them gave a $100 tip to the waitress, and they videoed it. And I'm sitting there at my desk, when I first saw the video, and I started crying. I was just like super emotional. The waitress was super emotional, and it was really beautiful to watch what they'd done. And so I'm sitting there kind of trying to think up ideas, and I thought of that video. My buddy Rob Aubrey was the one that inspired that. And I started thinking to myself, what if we just did this every week? We pick a new restaurant, we get a ton of people together, and we go and we give a $100 tip everybody there to the server. Welcome to another episode of Real Men, Real Conversations, and this is Jimmy Rex, and today I'm going to talk about the $100 dinner club. The reason I decided to do a full podcast on this is because too many questions remain out there. Too many people want to do this but don't know where to start. They don't know how to do it. They don't know exactly what it is or what it's all about. And so I want to go through on this podcast. I'm going to explain essentially how this came about, why we started doing it, how we do it, what we're doing, and then give a couple examples of some of the stories of kind of some of the people that we have been able to help along the way, some of the stories that have come out since we started doing this. So long story short, in November of 2019, right before the pandemic, there was a story here in Utah that broke. There was a young kid. He was from Haiti, and he was adopted, and a black kid, and his car, there was a story came up on the news. His car had been just like these kids had thrown all this stuff on it and were hazing him or harassing him or whatever you want to call it. And the story went into the paper, and I remember I pulled up the website and it was on Twitter or whatever, and just went to the story, and there was over 100 comments of people talking about how ridiculous this was, how sad this was, how racist Utah is. Just a very negative story. And I remember reading those, and I was like, geez, man, this is really bad. And so I went upstairs, went to go to bed, and one of my sayings in life is we are the they. And I say that to myself all the time. It became my mantra. At the time, it wasn't my coaching company like it is now. It was just I had it tattooed on my arm about 3 months before that in September of 2019. And I was trying to live by that motto. And essentially what it means is everybody always says, man, this is terrible. Somebody needs to do something about this, just like the comments in that post had been. Yet nobody was doing anything. And so I'm laying there in bed, and I said, you know what? I need to be the they. Like, I need to do something about this. I can change this entire narrative. I can change this whole story. So I went to work. I went back downstairs. I set up a Facebook page. I texted a bunch of my friends that have influence. And by the morning, we had hundreds of people donating money or time or whatever. We threw a big party for this kid at his school. We got to meet with his principal and his dad and all these people. And I got Donovan Mitchell to donate his shoes to him. He got to hang out with the Jazz players, front row, courtside seats. Rudy Gobert bought and donated to the kid. Another guy donated soccer cleats to his entire soccer team, new cleats. Somebody, my buddy that owns some car washes in town, donated a lifetime pass for car washes because his car had been essentially thrown all this crap on it. And it's just this really beautiful story. And the community really came together, and it showed what Utah is all about, because Utah is a community that cares. And so that was kind of on my mind. And I was like, man, that was so beautiful. And so when the pandemic hit, I immediately went into this mode of like, okay, this is March 2020, it's 3 months later, of how can we change the narrative again? How can we change these stories again? And my first idea that I had was the restaurants immediately closed down, and I knew they were going to be in trouble. We had actually opened a restaurant in Las Vegas called Mas Por Favor in January, at the end of January 2020. And so we'd been open about 5 weeks when everything got shut down, and Nevada went crazy. They really shut it down. And if you don't obey, you lose your liquor license. I mean, our whole thing was, it's a restaurant bar. And so we had to shut it down. And I knew these restaurants were going to be struggling. And so I texted all of my friends. I said, hey guys, I have an idea. Let's all buy $1,000 worth of gift cards from 10 different restaurants. And if 10 of us do this, that's $100,000 that we can buy these gift cards, and we'll wait to use them until we get past this tough time. But in the meanwhile, it'll inject a bunch of money into these restaurants. And about 6 of my buddies did this. So I ended up, making a little bit of difference. To this day, I have gift cards all over my drawers at my house and everything from a couple of these places. But it's harder than you would think to spend $1,000 worth of gift cards at a restaurant that sells smoothies or something, right? But so when that happened, that was kind of my first thing I wanted to do. But I wanted to do more than that. I said, there's more that we can do this. And I'd seen a video about 2-3 months earlier that came up on my Facebook. There was a couple of realtors in my area had gone to breakfast, and each of them gave a $100 tip to the waitress, and they videoed it. And I'm sitting there at my desk, when I first saw the video, and I started crying. I was just like super emotional. The waitress was super emotional, and it was really beautiful to watch what they'd done. And so I'm sitting there kind of trying to think up ideas, and I thought of that video. My buddy Rob Aubrey was the one that inspired that. And I started thinking to myself, what if we just did this every week? We pick a new restaurant, we get a ton of people together, and we go and we give a $100 tip everybody there to the server. And so at the time, there was only a couple of restaurants open. This is late March, probably 2020. And I also was just really wanting to support the restaurant community, the servers at the restaurants. But also it was I just wanted to get people together. Everybody was saying that we needed to lock up and that, we were super spreaders, but I didn't care. Like I saw early on that this was, I think that the devil divides us and God brings us together. And so my theory was we're going to have more issues down the line if we're not hanging out together and seeing each other. So I kept thinking of excuses where we could get together, and the $100 dinner club seemed like the perfect one. So the first restaurant we did it at was this Peruvian restaurant in Provo. We just picked it because it was one of the only restaurants that would let us come in and eat. And we were the only ones in there. Like the restaurant was empty otherwise. Just nobody was going out to eat at that time. And the first time I did it, I put a thing on my Instagram. We had, I think, 28 people show up. And there's a couple different ways to do it. And I'm going to go into the details after I kind of go through the origin of kind of how this all came about. I'm going to go through the details of kind of some of the ways you can do it to simplify it and make it easiest. In this particular case, what we did is I had everybody just Venmo me $100, and then I went to my bank and got the cash out so that we had it. It's a little bit trickier if you're trying to get everybody to bring $100. Just a lot of people don't have $100 cash. So the easiest way to do it is if somebody's in charge of it, they just bring a big thing of cash, and then everybody Venmos them, and they know how many people are coming. Also, the Venmo became an RSVP, which was an important part to know how many people we were going to have there. So we ended up with, I think, either 22 or 28 of us the first week. The second week was the other number, whichever one. Anyway, and we do that, I decided I wanted to make this more than just me and my friends doing this. I wanted to make it a movement. And I love that movement has gotten some legs again, because it kind of lost momentum once the restaurant industry came back about 2 years ago. But it shouldn't have. And it's really beautiful to watch this. It keeps happening. And, since I spoke at the Limitless event a week and a half ago, we've probably seen 10 of these pop up on Instagram. I've been tagged in. And so it's happening again. And it's so beautiful to watch every time. And the whole reason why the $100 dinner club is so beautiful is a couple of reasons. Number one is it brings together like-minded servant heart people. So you're networking with the best humans that you can possibly meet. It just brings you together. And so you're connecting with other great people. Number two is everybody is going through something. This is something, and I'll go into a couple of the stories later in the podcast here, but one of the things that I realized doing the $100 dinner club is every time we did it, people would say, oh my gosh, you have no idea. This person has this story or this story. And every time we would do one, it was this incredible story. And what I realized was that everyone is going through something. And that's why it always had such an impact. But even more than the money, it's what it does to show those people. Because a lot of times people, especially servers, they're feeling like they're not seen, they're not understood, nobody cares about them. All of a sudden, these random strangers come in and everybody leaves them this big tip. And they just feel like, wow, somebody cares about me. And it can really change the way that they're seen, even themselves, in that moment. So that's the second and third reason is it's the cash can change their life. You bring $2,000, $3,000, even $400, $500 can change somebody's life. But on top of that, it's that feeling of just knowing that there's good people out there that care. The other thing that it did is, for me, I get asked a lot. People hit me up a lot. They want to go to lunch. They want to pick my brain. They want to get to know me or whatever else. And so this was a really cool way for me to invite all those people at once, because I just don't have time to go to lunch with everybody that wants to, pick my brain or whatever. And so it was a really cool way for me to get all those people together. And I really got to meet all those people. And so I was meeting all these amazing people that had been following me on Instagram. So just a cool way to kind of connect with people that had been following me. Or, I got to meet guys like Mike Hartle and Jansen, Fugati, and all these other people that ended up becoming members of my coaching program or just friends of mine. And so I just really met a bunch of amazing humans. Anyway, and going back to why we film it and share it, this has kind of been the most controversial part of the $100 Dinner Club. And I admit it feels a little awkward sometimes. One recommendation that I have is that you designate 2 or 3 people to film it, so there's not like 20 phones up filming it. That does get a little bit weird. But I do think it's important to share it. And we're stuck in this place in society where it's like weird to share when you do a good deed. And I think that comes from, the Bible says, not to share your good deeds or whatever. But at the end of the day, how else do you find out about it? How else do you spread a movement? How else do we make it so that this spreads across the country and even the world? Some people have come at me online saying that we're only doing it for show, and we're really not. I mean, I literally leave a $100 tip every single meal I eat out if there's a server now. Like, I've been doing that for years. I'm sure there's a bunch of random servers out there that I never shared a thing, but that's just what I do. But I don't share that every time. I'm not trying to do this for clout. I just made a decision that that's what I was going to do. But in order to get other people to see this and to spread the movement, we do have to share it. And so absolutely, we want to record them. I want you to tag them, send me the videos. I love to share them. And everything on social media, there's so much negativity, there's so much fakeness, there's so many things out there that work against us, that it's kind of nice to just see things that make you feel good. Recently, I was at an event, and Dan Fleischman, who is a social media expert, literally wrote the book on it, probably the most connected guy in all of Los Angeles. Somebody asked him, they said, how do you, because he's talking about why it's important to build up your social media. We're all our own personal brands and all this stuff. And somebody said, well, how do you avoid the negativity of social media? Because I think that's the reason why I don't want to get on it. And Dan said something, and I've done this, not really consciously, but kind of. But what he said is, he said, I block or mute anybody. I mute anybody that I don't get positive vibes from. So anybody that's not sharing positive things, I just mute them. So when I pull up my Instagram or my Facebook, it's just inspirational person after inspirational person. Mine's the same way. I follow 2,500 people, probably 2,000 of them are muted. Because to be honest, it's just that they're just showing random things. And so my feed is, it's like I've created my own algorithm, but it's just positive things after positive things, because that's what I want to see all day. I want to see positive messages. And I think it's okay to share when we do good. I think it's okay to share when we're trying to make a difference, when we're doing good things. Is there a little bit of ego in it? A lot of times, yeah, there is. Like, we all have egos, like, thank goodness we do, or nothing would ever get done. I think the key is to not do it for that reason, but understanding that you can do a lot more by sharing this and spreading that and helping inspire other people. I know for me, I've gotten messages from all over the country, people from Minnesota, Wisconsin. There was a lady in Kentucky that, I think she got like a $1,300 tip. I shared about this one at the conference when I spoke. And so, I had these people coming at me online, and my response to one of them, I said, look, man, you might not like the reason we do this. To you, it might look like pure ego for us to post these videos, and maybe it's a little awkward for the server. But at the end of the day, this waitress in Kentucky just got a $1,300 tip, and it put her in tears because she was at the end of her rope. And she said it's the greatest blessing she's ever had. And so I don't really care if you don't like the method of which we do this, because that just happened. And that's one of 400 times that I know of, probably closer to 500 now, where these little dinners have taken place across the country. And some people add their own little twist to it. I was tagged in one the other day where they have this thing called a dream box, and people put their dream in the box, and then they want them to talk about what their dream is, and then they give them the tip, and they say, well, we want this to be the first step to help you towards your dream. I thought that was awesome. I was like, what a cool little way to kind of customize this and make it your own. And that's one of the cool things about the $100 Dinner Club, is this doesn't need to be this set rules. Like, a lot of people hit me up and like, how do I do this exactly? And I want you to understand that you can customize this and do it whatever works for you. There was some people in Colombia hit me up on Instagram. They said, hey, where we live, $100 is just too much. We're going to do the $30 dinner club. But for them, that was, like people in the States probably doing a several $100 dinner club. And they left this big tip, and it was really beautiful. And so I don't want you to feel like, if you're doing one of these events and people want to come, but they don't have the $100, maybe just say, you know what, if you have $30 or $50 or whatever it is. Now you can also go the other way. So, some of my friends are kind of crazy. And Dan Fleischman came into town, and we really wanted to make a difference. And so we said, let's do $1,000. Let's do $1,000 each. Let's just send it and see how it goes. So we all showed up for the first one of these, and I think we left like a $32,000 tip. And when we do a tip that big, we make sure we spread it between all the servers that are there at the restaurant. And so I remember we were at this little Asian restaurant in Midvale, and it was, they didn't really react when we gave them the tip. It was kind of just smiling or whatever. And I think that's part of their culture, the Asian culture. You just don't, you don't really show that emotion in front of everyone. But I went to go to the bathroom and peeked around the corner, and the 6 servers that had worked with us were all crying and jumping up and down and hugging each other. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. They're kind of doing it, back in the kitchen. And we've been able to do this now probably a dozen times where we've done the $1,000 each. And there's an old joke, I'd never want to be, I'd never join a club that would take me as a member. I always joke about that. But one of the cool things about this is if you're a realtor, if you're a loan officer, if you're an insurance salesman, if you're in any industry where networking is a part of what you're supposed to do and you want to really connect with good people, this is the most powerful tool I've ever seen to help you build your database, to help you get around other like-minded people, to help you grow your business. And it's okay to say, you know what, I hope I network and grow my business by doing this. And I'm going to do an entire podcast. I've done this on my podcast of how to network and do it the right way. The key to sum it up is you give everything expecting nothing in return. Like truly do it just because you want to do it, and the money will just flow back into you. And that's kind of how I feel about the $100 dinner club. Anyways, with these $1,000 dinner clubs, though, we've done several of them now. We did one up at my buddy Keaton's house pretty recently. We had a food truck come up, and this guy, to give you an idea, he's in his late 20s, and he lived in Mexico on the border. He came across, and he did hot dogs, and he's just thrown his whole life savings into this hot dog truck. And somebody had eaten at his place, I think my buddy Steve Harward or whatever, and had kind of gotten this guy's story, and he said, hey man, why don't you come up to our party and bring your hot dog truck, and you can make some money selling hot dogs. So we have this little barbecue at Keaton's, and I think so Andy Elliott was in town with his crew. They're just a bunch of freaking studs. If you guys have never met the Elliott Army, but each one of them donated, and I don't know how we got as much money as we did. There was only about 30 of us there, but we ended up raising $42,000. And so even more than that, I think some people that even couldn't make it, Venmo'd in or whatever. So we ended up, letting this guy know, what we did, and we gave him the money. It was so funny. There was so much money. It was just like falling out of his hands, and this dude's crying. He can't believe it. He's like, it was months worth of income for him for what he'd been doing, changed his life. And, as he's crying, he's just like, I just want to pay this forward. I just want to help other people now. And that's the beauty of the $100 dinner club. And again, it doesn't change it if it's $100 or $1,000. I was tagged in one the other day where 4 guys went to dinner, and they gave their waitress $400, and she just couldn't believe it. She was in tears and, hugging them and just so happy, just so grateful that somebody cared about her that much. And I'll never forget the first time I left a $100 tip. I'll tell this story because this is kind of where the first time I did, I'd heard stories about people leaving a $100 tip. And I remember thinking like when I was, in my 20s, like, man, that'd be cool to do one day. And I was at a restaurant in Springville. I can't remember what it's called, Springville, Utah. And I was sitting there, and I asked the waiter, I just said, hey man, do you guys have any Coke Zero? He said, we don't. And I was just joking around, but I go, could really go for a Coke Zero. I guess I'll just have water. And lo and behold, this kid comes back like 5 minutes later. He'd ran across the street to the 7-Eleven and bought me 2 Coke Zeros. He said, hey man, these 2 are on me. And I had never seen that kind of service in my life. I could not believe it. He had gone across the street to the 7-Eleven and bought me 2 Coke Zeros out of his own money. So I left him a couple $100 for a tip. I was feeling generous that day, and I wanted him to know that he needed to be rewarded for such good service. Because I preach this all the time. Like, if you want to meet amazing people, if you want to get ahead in life, no matter what job you're in, no matter what position you're in, just be amazing at it. Be so good at it that you can't not be noticed. and the right people will notice, and you'll very quickly find yourself in a really good position in life, whether it's with your work or with the people you're around or whatever else. So that was the first time I ever left a $100 tip. I remember it felt so good. And I came up with this saying when we started the $100 Dinner Club. I said, anybody that says that money can't buy happiness has never given enough of it away. Because that really is the happiness. I learned this, in my 20s. I had a lot of success in business, and I was very experience driven, I guess you could say. And so I went and did a lot of things. I went to every major sporting event, World Series, Super Bowl, NBA Finals, Final Four, all of them. And I ended up I got these really cool front row seats to the Jazz right by the players' tunnel. And it was the front row right there. And I ended up buying season tickets there for 5 years. And it was interesting because for the first, dozen or 24 games, it's just such an experience, right? And then it kind of almost became like, oh, there's another game this week. Almost like a chore to go to the game. And I remember thinking because when I was a kid, we didn't have any money. I remember the first time I got to go to a Jazz game, we were as far up high as you could go. And I tried to sneak down. They were playing the Dallas Mavericks. I remember Jamal Mashburn and Jason Kidd and Jackson, what the hell is that guy's name? Anyway, and I got kicked out of the seats trying to sneak down there. I remember thinking when I'm older, I'm going to have great seats. And so, most of my adult decisions is me just trying to make my 12-year-old happy, but it is what it is. And therapy would be cheaper, but I like going to the Jazz games. And so I would sit there in the front row. But what happened after a while is I realized the fun wasn't in me going. The fun was in giving the experience to somebody else. And so I really loved taking friends or taking my nieces and nephews or taking, just people that had never sat that close at a Jazz game before. It was a really cool experience and a really fun way to connect with other people. And so it's kind of what you realize, in life is the fun is to be able to give other people that experience. If you are in a bad place, if you're sad in your own life, if you're depressed, if you're down, I can promise you that the quickest way to get out of that spot is to go lose yourself in service doing stuff for somebody else. And people always say, well, how much money should I give to charity? How much should I, donate over the year to different causes and stuff? And the best answer I ever heard is you should give so much that it hurts. Give an amount where it hurts, right? Oof, I'm going to have to adjust a few things. I'm going to have to do some things differently. For some people, that might be $50 on the year. For other people, it might be a couple million, but you should give enough that it hurts, that you notice the thing, right? And I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. And again, we don't do it for ourselves. We do it for the other people, but selfishly, giving away money or doing these things, we do a Sub for Santa drive every year. I first started that a couple of years ago, and we ended up giving Christmas to a couple hundred kids. But, my buddy, again, Dan Fleischman, some of my other friends, they do the world's largest toy drive now. They broke the Guinness Book of World Records last year. We're doing it again this year. And we had so many toys in Utah last year. I was calling every organization I knew. I'm calling school districts. My buddy he's a administrator in Granite School District, my buddy JD. And we're calling all these different people because we just didn't have anyone else that we could give away these toys to. We had hundreds of thousands of toys, and we're going to do it again this year, break the record again. I think they're doing it in 15 cities this year. It's just an amazing organization and drive that Dan does. But there's so much fun in that. I remember the first time I did the Sub for Santa stuff, I spent the entire Christmas season buying these gifts, wrapping them, but what was cool is it brought all my friends together. We all did this together. I had probably 75 people help me in one way or another, either throw the event. We did a date auction to raise the money, which is a whole nother thing. But then helping to buy the presents, find the families, wrap the presents, deliver the presents. It was so much fun. I'll tell a quick story about that too, because again, when we start feeling bad for ourselves or start feeling down, this is the way out. I remember, so the whole reason I did that charity auction and started doing the Sub for Santa is I was starting to feel bad for myself that year. I was single. All my family was married and they have their own families. And I kind of just was in this weird in-between place. And I started feeling bad for myself. I started feeling sad that it was Christmas season. And a lot of people that, love Christmas, they don't understand that if you've going through a bad time, you're going through a family's going through trouble or divorce or somebody has passed away, it just multiplies how sad that holiday can be. And so I decided, I'm going to lose myself in service this year. And I did. And so that was the year we threw the first charity auction, date auction. My goal was to raise $1,500 and give Christmas to 2 families. We ended up raising over $32,000. My friends totally showed out. People broke the bank for this event. And And so we ended up doing Christmas for almost 200 kids. And I remember it was Christmas Eve. It was that morning. This is one of the most beautiful moments I've ever had in my life. And so I'll share this real quick because I was the one that got the most out of it, but it was because we chose to get out of our way and do these things. But what happened was it was Christmas Eve, and I had just, by the way, the organization of finding Christmas for 200 kids, like in my mind, I always said, if I even screw up one kid, that's a kid that's not going to have anything on Christmas. I had to be organized, and I am not naturally organized. And so I'm sitting there trying to piece this together, and we did it. We accomplished it. We got every single one of them out. And it's Christmas Eve morning, and so I'm kind of just going to relax today and take it in. I had dinner that night with my mom, and all of a sudden I get an email about 10 o'clock. It was like, hey, this family hasn't gotten their gifts yet. Are you guys planning on delivering them? It was 5 kids. And it was this little Latin family out in Harriman, Utah. And Harriman's kind of a pretty middle to upper class area. So I'm kind of like, what the heck? Like, and I hadn't seen this email for somewhere had gotten lost, and I had a choice to make. I'm like, okay, I can either just tell them sorry. Like, and by the way, I'd spent all the money we raised. So anything else was, going to be coming out of my own pocket. And I remember thinking to myself, I can just tell them that I'm done. Like, or I can hurry and probably spend my entire Christmas Eve trying to make this happen. And I said, you know what? I have nothing else to do. Let's do it. And I was a little bit bugged. I was bugged that somehow I missed the email. I was bugged that this family lived in Harriman because I figured they had money. I was just, whatever, the whole thing. So I was like, okay, so I go to Walmart. It was the only place open. Buy a bunch of all the toys for these 5 kids. And I buy a ton of wrapping paper with scissors and tape. I don't have time to wrap them, but I figured if I buy everything, the parents can wrap them, And so I went to the dinner in the movie with my mom. And then afterwards, I told this family, I told the person on the email, hey, I'll be there around 9 o'clock. It's going to be late because I have this thing I do with my mom on Christmas Eve. And so I go out there and it's a blizzard. It's like 25-minute drive from Murray, where I'm coming from. And on my way out there, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. And I get to this spot on the address and there's no house. It's like a cul-de-sac and it's like a field. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is just turning into a disaster. And I'm sitting there for a second and I'm rechecking my phone. I'm trying to like pull up the email. And I noticed this little shack house out in this field. It's about 100, 200 feet out there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's got to be the house. And it's been snowing like the whole day. And so I've got these 4 giant grocery bags or garbage bags full of toys and wrapping paper and everything. And I'm trudging through the snow. I'm just laughing at the ridiculousness of the whole situation. I get to the house and I knock and it's them. It's a Latin family. And I served my Mormon mission in Mexico. So in another lifetime, I learned Spanish. And so I'm speaking to them and talking. And I go in their house. They have a living room, like a half kitchen, and then there's 1 bedroom. And all the kids were in the bedroom, sleeping. They have a tree in the middle of this room, this little shack. I mean, the whole place was probably 700 square feet. And there's not a single toy under it. The tree was decorated as if like you let your 4-year-old do it and he could only use what was in eyesight. And I just got so emotional. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've had this bad attitude. I almost didn't come do this. Like, what if I hadn't done this? There was not a single toy under the tree. And the mom and the dad were so grateful and they're crying. They're just like so happy. I mean, I went all out. We have, again, 4 bags full of toys. And I tell them everything. And they were so good. They were trying to give me something that had meaning. They tried to give me, and this is kind of a beautiful part of the story, but kind of gives you an idea of like just where they were at in life. This is 2011, so it was just a harder time for everybody. They tried to give me the remote control, and I'm like, I don't need your remote control. Like, they just, anything that had value to them, they were trying to give to me. And she went in her kitchen, she grabbed me a hot pad, and she gave me this hot pad, and I took it, that was fair. And that hot pad is so sacred to me. It's so beautiful, and it represents, and so I'm leaving their house, and I'm just bawling my eyes out, and I'm like super emotional. I'm so mad at myself that I almost didn't do this. And to this day, it's my all-time favorite Christmas memory. And it was my favorite Christmas I ever had, was doing that moment. And so my point of telling that story is a lot of times I think we make it about us, or, because you're going to benefit a lot by doing this. You're going to meet the most incredible people. Some of you will meet best friends. You're going to have experiences that are going to change your life. But selfishly, it's going to make you feel good. And people always be like, well, why do you do all this stuff? I do all the service stuff. And I said, honestly, it just makes me feel good. Like, it's a fun way to live. And that alone is a reason to do this. And so hopefully this has inspired you a little bit. A couple of these stories we did one down in Mexico back when we were doing it. And I was going down there to work with my buddy Sanjeev. He was working at a hospital down there, a cancer hospital. And he wanted me to come down. There was 5 of us going down. I said, I'll only go down if you guys will do the $100 dinner club with me, because it was while we were doing it. They're like, done. And in Mexico, it's like a lot, you know. And so we go to this restaurant. And when at the end of it, you know, we do the $100 dinner club. We give our waiter $500 tip, and he goes away, and like nothing happens for like 10 minutes. And one of his coworkers comes out. This lady comes out. She goes, "How did you guys know what's going on?" We're like, "We didn't know what's going on." And she says, "A year ago today, his brother was kidnapped by a cartel. He disappeared, and he's never seen him since. And you guys just did that like today." And he's just so emotional in the back. And we're just like, oh my gosh, like, it was really see God's hand in this a lot, right? And we did another one, you know, at a restaurant where it was a young girl. She had actually been raped, and when she was in high school, got pregnant, and decided to keep the baby. And long story short, the baby was deaf, and she ended up, I guess the week before that we had done this, the week of, she had spent all of her money to get some surgery done for her babies. You know, the waitress she was only like 18 or 19 at the time. She just graduated high school. But when she was 15, she got pregnant from this situation, and she'd donated she'd spent all the money to get something done for his ears, so that some kind of thing where his hearing. And like 2 days after that is when we had no idea. We gave her the tip. We found out later this was her situation. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever heard, and just showing up for that human in that moment. And it's person after person we've had this experience with. And the reason why is because everybody's going through something. Some of those are more drastic cases, obviously. But one of the things I do is every day I wake up with a prayer. I say, God, lead me to the people that need me today. I invite you to do that as you do the $100 dinner club, is to just start it with that prayer. God, please lead me to the people that need me. And I promise you that you will be led to the people that really need this. And so as you're trying to figure out which restaurant to go to and, you know, what night to do it, I invite you to start that with a prayer and just kind of lean into that. And, you know, you kind of can't screw it up because everybody needs something. As far as logistics go, I do want to cover. So we have set up a website, $100dinnerclub.com. We set that up so that if you want to be notified of a $100 dinner that's going on in your area, in your city or in your state, you will automatically get an email when one gets set up in your area. Also, if you want to host one, then you just send us an information. We'll let everybody in that area know that's signed up that one is going to be happening and connect you guys with each other. We're also going to be posting the videos there so people can go there for inspiration. And it's just going to be a really cool way for us to connect people that are all on board with the $100 dinner club. Please use the hashtag, tag me at Mr. Jimmy Rex in the videos, because I want to be able to share them on my social media and to be able to see them. It just makes me happy anytime I get to see it. But this is just getting started. We've been doing this for 4 years now, like I said, but it's coming back strong. At this last event that I spoke at, it was a charity panel that I was asked to be on, and he asked me to talk about this, the $100 dinner club. And so one of the things that I did is I invited all 7,000 people in attendance. I said, stand up if you're willing to host one of these $100 dinner clubs within the next year. And about 5,000 people stood up. And so I know this is, going to have a huge effect. And who better to give $100 to than the people serving us, right? But it doesn't have to be that complicated. So here's what it is. Let's say you want to host one in your area. First thing you want to do is pick a date, pick a restaurant, pick a time. I would not put out what restaurant it is, just put what city that's in, because you don't want people to start telling the restaurant or the server or whatever else. And then what I would do, the easiest way to do this is you say to RSVP so that we know how many people are coming, send me $100 Venmo, and sends $100 Venmo to the person that's hosting it. And then that's your ticket basically to the dinner. And then the person hosting can get the money or the cash, and they bring it to the event. Now, other ways to do it, obviously you can just say, yeah, just meet us there. Or you can be like, hey, we're all meeting at this restaurant this time, or we're hosting a barbecue and invite a food truck or whatever, like however you want to do this. But that's the easiest way to do it. Again, it doesn't matter if it's 2 of you or 20 of you or 200 of you. We did this with over 100 people at one restaurant at the Braza Grill here in Utah. It was awesome. I just told them we had a reservation for 100 and told them what we were doing. I said, hey, we just want to help your staff. I think we split it up between 6 or 7 staff members there. And so it's pretty simple to do. And then as you have your meal, everybody orders. We just have people pay for their own meals. And then at the end, when they bring the checks, before we bring the checks so that we're not leaving a 0 tip on everybody, we have the server come out, or the servers, if there was multiple of them or whatever, usually there is. And we just, again, we want to record it. We want to share it. And so I always ask their permission afterwards, by the way. I say, hey, are you okay if we share this video on social media? That's an important thing, I think. And then a second thing that I always do is I turn to everybody in the audience. I say, guys, the reason we're here is we're part of a group called the $100 Dinner Club. And we just want to thank you for your service, for, serving us tonight, for working, for having a job, for contributing to society, for doing this for everybody. And as part of this, each person here tonight brought $100 for the tip. And then I just tell them, so here's your tip. Either hand them the money or tell them how much it is. And like the one I got tagged in this morning, it was $1,600. And he just kept pulling out another $100 out of his pocket. It was pretty funny. And then we just hand it to him. We say, thank you. And, afterwards, if they want to say something, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then at the very end, I just say, hey, by the way, everybody here, get out your phone. You're going to leave this restaurant a review right now. Let's leave them a 5-star review and help them that way as well. And then we invite people to share it on their social media and invite other people to do it as well. And that's how we spread the movement. Again, I always ask the server if they're comfortable, or are you okay if we post this on my social media, or if we post it on the website or whatever. And then there you go. And you can post it. And if they're not comfortable, that's okay. Don't post it. But that's the $100 Dinner Club. It's more simple than people think. It's a beautiful way to get people together. If you're in a city and you're like, I am just intimidated here, I want to come to one first, sign up on the website, $100dinnerclub.com, and or go to my Instagram. You can see it there, $100 Dinner Club. But that's Mr. Jimmy Rex. And yeah, we just invite you to all do this. Keep it simple and go spread goodness and do good. You will see, number one is you will gain the most. It's going to make you feel good. You're going to be on a high that is no drug can compare with. And then also, you'll inspire other people to do the same thing. I recommend, if you can, to bring your kids to these dinners. Let them see what it looks like to be generous and to give. How cool is that? I had a dad that was very generous with tipping. I remember going golfing with him one time. I was probably 15 and he tipped $100. And I was like, oh man, my dad, part of me was like, are we going to be poor? Like, my dad's just giving away money. But I remember him being very generous with that as well. And so it's a good thing for kids, and explain to them what we're doing and why we're doing it, and all those things, why you're doing it. And so thank you again. Hopefully this is helpful for anybody looking to do a $100 Dinner Club. Hopefully it puts a little bit more context into why we share it. This is a movement we're trying to create. My goal would be one day to look back and we've had tens of thousands of these dinners all across the country. There's no reason not to. Nobody's more deserving than the people serving us at restaurants. They all are in need. That's nobody's dream job. Nobody is set for life because they're a server. They're just not. A lot of people do fine, but at the end of the day, they can all use a little bit of extra help. Also, another reminder, if you're going out to eat and somebody is serving you, I'm not talking about where they whip the iPad around and they just took your order and they want a tip. I don't even leave tips for that. I'm like the ultimate tipper, and I just don't think that's where you leave tips. I choose to leave tips on the people that I think deserve it. And so that's my servers, that's my Uber drivers, that's people dropping, DoorDash or whatever that might be. That's my barber. Anybody that's doing a service for me, I want to leave a generous tip. But I invite you to do the same, minimum 20, 25% tip if you're going out to eat, no matter what. I invite you to make that a standard in your life, that even if they're terrible, even if they suck, like, give them the benefit of the doubt. You never know what's going on in somebody's life, and so leave that 20, 25% tip as a minimum. And then on the occasion that you're feeling it, or the person deserves it, or you've had a really extra good month at work or whatever it might be, try the $100 tip and you'll see it'll make your day. So appreciate you listening. For more episodes like this one, make sure you check out the Jimmy Rex Show. And this has been Real Men, Real Conversations. Till next time, take care.